All right, so before I begin today's episode, right, I want you all to think about something, okay? What did the women before you teach you? And I don't just mean what they sat down and intentionally taught you. I'm not talking about the famous fried chicken recipe, right? I'm talking about what did you actually learn from watching them? What did you learn from what they did well? What did you learn from what hurt you? What did you learn from the things that they tolerated or the things you watched them tolerate, the things that you witnessed them go through? What did you watch them survive? What did you know for them to have survived? What are some of the things that you observed that they kind of normalized? And what did you learn from looking at their lives and saying, okay, I can keep that? Or on the flip side, what did you learn from looking at their lives and determining, nah, that ends with me? Because sometimes we talk about breaking generational cycles as if we're throwing everything away and starting all over again. But what if we're not? What if some of us aren't starting from scratch at all? What if we're starting from wisdom? Now, let's get it understood. When we talk about generational healing, there's a lot of conversation about what our parents didn't do, right? We see people online all day long sharing their truths and telling their tales and their stories and things that they have gone through, all right? So we're hearing constantly what our mothers didn't give us, what our fathers failed to teach us, what trauma they passed down, all the things we had to unlearn. And listen, some of that absolutely needs to be acknowledged. You cannot heal something if you're unwilling to identify it. But there's one thing I think we need to be careful of. If I spend my entire adulthood focused on everything that wasn't given to me, I can often become so consumed with what they didn't give me that I forget to ask myself, what am I going to do about that? Because at some point, awareness has to become action. I don't want to just be able to identify dysfunctional cycles. I want to establish healthy ones. And I also realize something. I'm not starting from scratch. So I'm not starting over with absolutely nothing, right? I'm starting over with everything that I've experienced, everything I've witnessed, everything I've learned, everything that worked, everything that didn't work, the things I want to preserve, and the things that I refuse to repeat. So I'm starting from wisdom. So, for my first point, I want to just talk about how you can definitely honor what was good without pretending everything was good. Okay. And I think for so long, this is where I kind of had it confused, right? So, generational healing does not require us to rewrite history in either direction. We don't have to pretend our childhood was wonderful to acknowledge something our parents did well. And we don't have to pretend everything was terrible in order to validate the things that hurt us. Two things can be true. And one thing about me, child, I love me a good nuance, okay? There may be things you genuinely appreciate from the generation before you. Maybe it's traditions, perhaps it's the faith. I'm personally very grateful that my mom introduced me to the Lord. She taught me about Jesus. She taught me to have a relationship with Jesus, right? Also, work ethic was also passed down to me as well. There's hospitality. What if some of you were taught hospitality growing up? Also, the importance of family, celebrating certain holidays in a certain way, different recipes, right? What if it's music, humor, resilience? Whatever those things are, you are most definitely allowed to keep them. But breaking generational cycles doesn't mean burning down the entire house. Sometimes it means walking through the house and deciding this stays, this goes, this needs a little repairing, and this I'm going to just go ahead and rebuild that differently. The adulthood isn't necessarily rejecting your family or completely merging with its traditions and expectations. It's developing the ability to say, I came from this family, but I'm also my own person. I can consciously decide what I carry forward. Okay, that would be the psychological aspect of just breaking certain cycles. You get to keep what you agree with, keep what works for you, and do away with doesn't. And if there's something that you've experienced that, okay, this could have been cool, it has the potential to go somewhere, I'm going to keep this, but I'm just going to put my own little twist on it, right? So, point two that I want to point out to you. Some of your greatest lessons were never intentionally taught. Sometimes people teach us exactly who they want us to become, and sometimes they teach us who we don't want to become, and both are lessons. And this is so funny because it reminds me of years ago when I started going to church on my own, on my own. And I ended up at a church that was where my uncle at the time was the pastor, and my aunt, who was my father's aunt, was the first lady. And I remember it was also like one of those times when I was kind of dealing with a lot, right? Just growing pains, growing up, trying to find my way and everything. And I remember having this discussion with my aunt one time, and she told me, she said, you may not have an exact idea of what you want, but you have plenty of examples of what you do not want. So this kind of reminds me of that, right? But nonetheless, both the lessons, whether they're directly teaching you or whether you're just learning from what not to be, right? Both of those are lessons. There are things I understand now because I experienced the consequences of them. Maybe nobody sat you down and taught you emotional regulation, but experiencing emotional chaos taught you why emotional regulation matters. Maybe no one taught you healthy boundaries or how to exercise those boundaries, but experiencing what happens when there are no boundaries in place, that will teach you why your children need to learn them. Maybe no one modeled healthy communication. Maybe everyone was just screaming and hollering and cussing each other out, right? But living through those unhealthy connections made you determined to learn another way. And that is still knowledge. You pay for some of this wisdom and experience. Don't discount the education just because you didn't like the classroom, okay? So even though you didn't learn it in a way that was, that was more healthy, or you didn't learn it in the most comfortable way, it still was a lesson that was taught. And it's important for you to recognize that lesson and decide, what can I do with this information? What can I do with this data, right? So point three I want to point out to you guys is breaking the cycle is only half of the work. We often hear the phrase, I'm breaking generational curses. And that's great. Like, okay. But after you break it, what are you building in its place? Because removing dysfunction isn't the same as establishing health. If the cycle was silence, what are you replacing that silence with? Is it healthy communication? Is it cussing folks out? Is it insults? Is it passive aggressiveness? Like, what are you replacing that silence with? If the cycle was parentification, what replaces that? Are you actually allowing the children to be children? Or are you still, you're not letting them do anything. You're not teaching them any responsibilities at all, right? And I've been guilty of that. In an effort to keep my children from feeling parentified, I often wondered if I was even teaching them enough responsibility. So it's easy to fall into that, right? You just have to be aware. So again, self-awareness is key. If the cycle was poor boundaries, what replaces that? Connection with appropriate limits should replace poor boundaries, okay? If the cycle was emotional avoidance, what replaces it? Are you teaching children how to identify, communicate, and regulate their emotions? If the cycle was affection being withheld, what replaces that? Intentional affection and reassurance, okay? The goal isn't simply my children won't experience what I experienced. The next question is, what will they experience instead? That's where the cycle breaking becomes cycle building, okay? So we want to just break generational cycles, but we also want to establish healthy cycles. Okay. We want to build new healthy cycles where it's necessary. Okay. So here brings me to point 4. The next point is your children don't need a perfect mother or a perfect parent for that matter. They just need an intentional one. So there's a slight trap here, right? So once you become aware of what hurts you, you can become terrified of hurting your own children. And suddenly you're trying to parent perfectly. And that's impossible. I'm going to get things wrong, no doubt about it. There will be probably something my children will tell me 20 years from now that I didn't realize affect them. And sidebar, my goal is to make sure that they can actually feel like they can come to me in confidence, come to me with honesty, and know that mom's going to take accountability, because I don't ever want my children feeling like they have to turn to TikTok or whatever social media is popping off at that time to get on that camera and tell a bunch of strangers that their mama didn't love them and their mama don't want to hear them. Absolutely not. So once we become aware that something is hurting them, I want them to be able to feel like they can talk to me. And that's what we're building here, right? And you don't have to be the perfect parent. The perfect parent does not exist. And take it from someone who has lived a life of just chasing perfection. I always wanted to feel like I was just perfect. Like if I wasn't perfect, then I was going to let everyone down, right? And that's something that constantly rings in my mind sometimes, because as a mom, I want to make sure that I'm a really good mom. I want to be a great mom. I want to be the best mom that I can be. And oftentimes I confuse that with perfection. So my children don't need perfection. They just want intention. They want me to be intentional. They want me to be self-aware. They want me to be healthy. And those are differences. Those are the two differences right there, okay? So my responsibility isn't perfection once again. My responsibility is being willing to listen, being willing to apologize sincerely, being willing to adjust my behavior, because like I said in my last podcast, an apology without repair, or an apology without adjustment, or an apology without changed behavior is just a form of manipulation. I also had to be willing to learn and creating the kind of relationships where my children can actually tell me, Mom, that hurt me, without having to feel like they have to manage my emotions afterward. That's a healthy cycle worth breaking. They don't have to check my temperature to talk to me. Okay. The next point I want to get into is you can take something good and make it healthier. This is one of the parts of generational healing that doesn't get discussed enough. Sometimes the thing being passed down isn't inherently bad. It just needs a little refinement. Maybe your family taught you loyalty. Beautiful. That's great. However, are you teaching your children that loyalty requires tolerating mistreatment, or are you teaching them that they can call out mistreatment, they can call out whatever may be negative and still be perceived as being loyal to their family? Maybe they taught you you're keeping the faith, but you're creating room for questions, honesty, discernment, and genuine relationship with God rather than simply performing religion. The Bible is a huge book. We're reading the Bible, and what comes with reading is also a level of comprehension. And not everyone has the same level of comprehension. And I'm going to leave that alone. But not everyone has the same level of comprehension. And also there are some people who will read something and want to wonder, they may have questions. Well, how come this happens? Or how come it's like that? Or what led to that? Or why is it like that? Though it's natural and it's human. You're human. You're allowed to ask questions. You're allowed to go to God with questions. I think that we've gotten so wrapped up in being taught that asking a question defies authority, or asking a question is somehow disrespectful. When asking a question and getting an answer it strengthens your understanding. The Bible says in all things, get an understanding. So asking a question, and let me be clear, it depends on how you, it also, the reason you're asking a question and how you're asking a question also matters, because let's not pretend like people just ask questions because they just want to heckle. They want to heckle, they want to troll, they want to, I don't know, they just want to, they have some type of malicious intent behind it. But there are some of us who genuinely ask questions because we genuinely want to understand. Okay, so asking questions does not mean that you're being disrespectful. God is not offended by your questions. God wants you to ask questions because you're talking to him, right? God just wants you to talk to him for real. So, maybe your family taught you to help family, and you're keeping your generosity while adding boundaries. So when it comes to this, your family can teach you how to help family, but oftentimes the family teaches you how to help the family, but the family, drags their feet with helping you. Sometimes that is the case. So in a healthy family dynamic, it's good to help family. It's nothing's wrong with helping family, but it also should come with a healthy acceptance of that person's boundaries. Can you come do XYZ? Well, no, I can't today, but I can come tomorrow. And you should be able to say that without someone getting bent out of shape or trying to exile you from the family, isolating you from the family, and all kinds of nonsense. You should be able to say, I can't do it today, but I can do it on such and such day. Or if I do it today, I can only do between the times of such and such. You don't have to drop your whole life, stop what you're doing to run to help people. And no one who loves you should expect you to do that. Now, we talk an emergency, that's another thing. But again, you decide how you want to handle your emergencies. That's not my business. I know how I handle mine, and you can handle yours. But as far as anything else that's outside of being emergent, you're allowed to express and exercise your boundaries. And people should not get offended by that if they truly love you, okay? Perhaps your family taught you strength, all right? But you're keeping resilience. And if your family taught you strength, you're keeping that resilience, but at the same time, you're teaching your children that strength also includes asking for help, resting, crying when you need to, and admitting that something hurts. Being resilient is not the same as holding everything inside. And I think that's where people get it confused. I've been called strong so much that I don't even want to hear it anymore. Do not call me strong. Don't call me no strong woman, no strong black woman. I don't want to hear it. I honestly don't want to hear it. It just gets to a point where it's just no longer a compliment. Okay? When you've been hearing it in the wrong context all your life. Strength should not be defined by how much nonsense you can endure. Okay? So you should definitely be able to, and you should definitely encourage your children to realize that strength includes asking for help when you need it without feeling a failure. Without feeling like a failure because you need help. That's ridiculous. Your children should also feel comfortable with resting when they need to. Like, life is hard for children too. They're going to school, they're dealing with things too, and they can only handle what their little minds can handle. So to us as adults, it's like, girl, you only going to class? Like, what? You only going to class? But that's only because our minds have been through grade school and plenty of other things in life. So of course, at this point, being in the 7th grade is a lot easier than being a 40-something-year-old adult paying bills and everything. But their mind capacity is much smaller than ours. So children deserve to rest when they need to without feeling guilty. The same thing with crying. Feelings are feelings, and crying is a way to cleanse the soul. So they need to cry. Let it out. And it's also fine to admit when something hurts, whether physically, emotionally. If it hurts, Speak it, say it hurts. Call it out, put a name to it, say it hurts. And this is what I mean when I say I can take something that was given to me and put a healthier, more genuine spin on it. So I like to say my own razzle dazzle. I like to put my own razzle dazzle on it, right? I don't have to throw away the entire foundation just because I'm renovating the house. Okay. The next point I want to get into is wisdom is more than knowing what happened. There's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge says this happened to me. Awareness says this affected me. And wisdom says, now that I understand it, what am I going to do differently? That's where healing becomes stewardship. I have information now that previous generations may not have had. We know more about child development now. We know about trauma. We know more about attachments. We know more about emotional regulation. We know more about family systems. We know more about mental health, and we know more about boundaries. And these are all so much more than just buzzwords. And now that I have access to the resources that my previous generations they didn't have access to, the question now becomes, what am I now going to do with what I know? This whole concept of breaking generational cycles and building healthier generational cycles, it's all biblical as well. Proverbs 4:7 says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. Scripture doesn't tell us merely to accumulate experiences. We're supposed to gain wisdom from them. You're supposed to use your experiences, take the lesson, take the knowledge from it, reevaluate, and decide what could be done differently. James 1:22 says, be ye doers of the word and not only hearers. For me, this connects directly to generational healing. Eventually, what I know is going to show up in how I live. I can't just talk about the boundaries, I have to establish them. I can't just recognize unhealthy communication, I have to communicate differently. I can't just say children deserve emotional safety, I have to create it. Knowing better isn't the finish line. Doing something with what I know is where the transformation happens. And I think this is where a lot of people kind of get confused. And this is actually where I wasn't confused on it, but I couldn't understand how someone could have so much knowledge of this information, have so much knowledge of boundaries, trauma, how it affects the environment you grow up in, how it affects you. Like someone can have so much knowledge of that and still not know how to apply it, or still just choose not to apply that knowledge. So doing something with what I know is where the transformation actually happens. It's not just knowing it. Otherwise, you're just holding information. But what are you doing with that information? Okay. The next point I want to discuss is thinking beyond your children. So this isn't only about raising children differently, it's a lot bigger than that. What becomes normal in your family because you decided to change it? Maybe your daughter grows up believing that saying no doesn't make her disrespectful after all. Maybe your son grows up knowing that emotions don't make him weak. Maybe your children don't associate love with obligation. Maybe apologizing just becomes a normal thing. Maybe therapy isn't shameful and so taboo. Maybe asking for help isn't so embarrassing after all. Maybe affection isn't something people have to earn. Maybe faith becomes something lived instead of just something that's performed. And maybe your children take those things into their relationships, into their marriages, into their friendships, into the way they parent their children. And suddenly something you decided to change at your kitchen table all those years ago affects people that you may never even get to meet. That is legacy. The next point I want to talk about is how the women before me are a part of my story, but they don't get to write the ending. I can acknowledge the women who came before me without either idolizing them or demonizing them. I can recognize what they survived. I have compassion for what they didn't know. I can appreciate what they gave me. I can grieve what they couldn't give me. And I can still decide this part changes with me. It's not dishonoring where I came from. That's taking responsibility of becoming a matriarch. Not being the woman who controls everyone, not being the woman everyone has to keep happy, not being the center of everyone's life, but becoming a woman whose wisdom creates something healthier for the people who's coming behind her. And as a funny story, just a few weeks ago, I was just chilling with my husband. We were watching TV, and I forgot what we were watching. It was like something that had like a family dynamic going on. And my husband made a joke and said that I was the matriarch of our family. So I'm just laughing it off. And I'm like, haha. But then it was like, wait a minute. You might be on to something, brother. You might be on to something. I just might be. And it had me thinking that all of the changes that I'm doing and breaking these generational cycles and just kind of cherry picking, taking what we can live with, leaving what we don't need, changing what we need to change. Where it's creating something different, it's creating something new. So yeah, I would like to think that I may be the matriarch. Years and years and years from now, when my children decide if they want to. I'm not pressuring my kids to become parents, but years and years and years and years and years from now, when they start their own lives, start their own families, get married, have children, I intend to just be that grandmother that's just going to always have my grandkids. Come on over, mama. I cooked, I baked cookies, whatever it is. My husband is actually also looking forward to that. He brought it up and said he can't wait to be a grandpa. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? What you mean a grandpa? Huh? So let's slow down, brother. Slow down. But yeah, this is something that we just talked about. Like in the future, like we just can't wait. God willing, if our children decide that they want to, be parents, Lord willing, if God keeps us either in this home or blesses us with something else, we want to have that nice home, lots of space where our grandkids can come, bake them cookies. My husband teach them how to grill. He'll still be grilling by then. So yeah, like this is bigger than just what's going on today. It's bigger than what's going on today. And for some people, a legacy is just money or a house and cars or whatever. But for me, legacy is family. It's a bond. It's a family bond. It's healthy. It's healthy communication, healthy bonds, healthy relationships within the family, support, love, genuine love. That's a legacy. That's a legacy. So no, I'm not starting from scratch. I'm starting with everything life has taught me. I'm starting with the good things that were passed down. I'm starting with the painful things that taught me we need to change some things. I'm starting with what I learned through motherhood, what I learned through marriage, what I've learned through faith, what I've learned in therapy, what I've learned through my education, and most of all, what I've learned through my mistakes, what I've learned through setting boundaries or even not having boundaries. That was a time when, that was a point in time too. And I'm learning from growth. I'm learning from experience. I'm taking what was good and preserving it. I'm taking what was unhealthy and I'm challenging it. I'm taking what was missing and I'm intentionally building it. And I'm accepting that my children will probably take what I give them and improve on it too. Because do your thing, baby. I want you to. I want you to. Take whatever I give you and make it better. Because who knows, by that time, there'll be new awareness, new information. I never proclaim to do everything perfectly, but I'm intentional and I'm definitely trying my best. I'm not like a lot of these other people who just say, I'm doing the best what I can. I'm doing the best I can. No, I'm truly giving my best. I'm accepting that my children will probably take what I give them and improve upon that too. And that's the whole point. I want them to build beyond this. And hopefully one day they'll be able to look back at what I gave them and say, there were things my mother got right. There were things she got wrong, but there are things I decided to do differently too. And they'll have wisdom of their own to build from, because healthy generations aren't created when one woman decides to get everything perfect. They're created when each generation is willing to learn, heal, build, and hand the next generation something that's healthier than what they received. So I'm not starting from scratch. I'm starting from wisdom. And hopefully the people coming after me won't have to start from scratch either. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it to be inspirational, be sure to like, subscribe, share with a friend. And until next time, let's get it understood.